Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mac and D podcast. Now, if I was a bad friend, I'd point out the fact that I chose Chiefs over Eagles and that you, Jimmy D, chose Eagles over Chiefs. But I'm not going to do that because I'm not a bad friend, you know?
I will throw out there, I was very steadfast. I said if it's a close game, the Chiefs will win. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a blowout. It was a close game in the fourth, and I was like, yeah, Chiefs are winning this. Even when they got the ball back down six, I was like, yeah, Chiefs have the dub here. Like I just felt like the writing was on the wall that second half. But kudos to both teams. It was actually one of the better Super Bowls I think we've had in a while. Um, we could sit here and talk about the holding call towards the end, but I think that does take away from what was otherwise a very good game. I think the biggest news that came out of this, and I'd be curious what your take would be, is like, how did the NFL let the Super Bowl be played on a literal ice rink? Like that was the shittiest field conditions I've ever seen for a football game, let alone the Super Bowl.
Yeah, for sure. I don't really know what was up with the field. The Oklahoma State Cowboys were apparently the ones who put it together, the university. They have a really big agricultural school or whatever. And they came out with a statement afterwards saying that, yes, they helped put together the grass that was used on the field, but something about how the NFL was like moisturizing it, just watering it and everything was causing all the slipperiness. A few other people were saying that like there was the paint that they were putting on top, and then I guess the halftime show also messed a lot of things up because like people were kicking around grass as they were getting off the field. But yeah, the NFL has to be embarrassed if this was like the thing that they were putting their players on, the field that they were putting their players on in the freaking biggest game of the year. Like it was a pretty abysmal look for the NFL, unless the NFL is really trying to push turf at this point. They really wanted that turf earlier in the season. And they're like, oh, look at this shit grass. You guys asked for it. Now you got grass, and now it's a terrible
I
game.
actually saw that as a conspiracy theory that they made sure it was the worst field ever with real grass, so then that way they can be like, see, I mean, sure there were no damaged ligaments in the Super Bowl, but guess what? You guys were on ice skates. You better go to turf.
I think it was kind of crazy though that even with the bad field conditions, that wasn't really what caused the major injury in this game, which was Patrick Mahomes re-injuring his ankle. Somehow he just kept scooting along. He was doing that zest run that he always does, his little zest walk, and yeah, he ended up coming up a little gimpy earlier in the game, but then he had a 26-yard run, which was his longest run of the season on that scramble. But God, he was just scooting.
Yeah, he
um,
kind of looked like a guy rushing to the bathroom pretty much the entire game, right? Like the dude was just holding on to a poo there and just would keep on scooting along. It was not
exactly.
an athletic looking run.
Not at all. I was shocked. I don't know what you felt about this, but I could not believe that the Eagles' pass rush did not hit home more often. They did get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, to be fair. They were well vaunted going into this game, right? They pressured Mahomes on 25% of passes in the Super Bowl, but they only had one actual like good hit on Mahomes that felt like the entire game. The Chiefs' offensive line was good, but like Mahomes just made them look a lot better by getting the ball out of there quickly. What do you think of the Eagles' pass rush?
I was kind of scratching my head the whole night. You could see some people slipping, but you're like, what's going on here? And I saw some stats afterwards where it was like on Mahomes dropbacks, 40% of the time, one of the two edge rushers was slipping and falling down, which does not help your case for getting home. So you really wonder why they didn't change it up. So what you saw was in the second half, the Chiefs brought up a lot of up the middle blitzes, right? Like you're running straight forward, you can't slip. And the Eagles never really changed their game. They were, hey, we get pressure off the edge and we do a lot of stunts. Every time they're doing that, you could just see them losing their footing. Like the offensive linemen just have a better position when all they're trying to do is anchor down on on that very slippery grass. And the Eagles, trying to dip under, trying to go side to side. Like, I mean, they were on the ground the whole night. And then all you have to do is fall on top of the guy, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested. I think they get home more if it, like you said, if it was a turf field. But at the same time, both teams played on the exact same field, so you can't say, "Well, this is clearly what happened." It's like, look, the Chiefs adjusted and the Eagles didn't.
Yeah, and the Chiefs were able to extend drives because of that. Mahomes was able to use his legs. He had over 40 yards rushing in this game. Pretty impressive performance on the ground for him. What was interesting in here for me too is I thought that this game would end up being a low scoring game if the Chiefs were going to win. I thought that they were going to have to scrape and crawl and everything just in order to make this game happen. And you were extremely right in that it was going to be a high scoring game. I did not really foresee that if we at least saw a Chiefs win. But what was interesting to me is I feel like Jalen Hurts actually outplayed Mahomes. Who did you think had a better performance amongst the quarterbacks?
Other than Jalen dropping a football, without being touched, the old phantom strip sack. Yeah, I mean, Jalen just balled out. He had, what, 3 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown, like, just played phenomenal football. That turnover truly was costly, that every extra possession mattered. But, I mean, he was throwing darts too. Like, I mean, there were so many times, there was like a 3rd and 14 to Goddard, or I mean, Goddard balled out too. Like, I think he deserves a ton of props for the game he had. He was
Yeah.
making every critical catch that he could. There was like a 3rd and 9 that he flipped to AJ Brown. That was just an absolute dime. Like, there were just so many passes that Hurts was making that like, until really kind of midway through the 4th quarter, when I was like, oh, I think the Chiefs kind of took the momentum here. It's like it felt like the Eagles weren't going to be stopped. It's just that second half was so much better for the Chiefs than the Eagles. The adjustments they made were just truly the difference there. And I think it goes to what we were talking about with they have Andy Reid on their sideline, and we think that at the end of the day might actually be the difference maker.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts was fun as hell in this game. And it just really sucks that he had probably his worst play of the entire season in the biggest game of the season. That one pass that he had to AJ Brown for the touchdown, that long was like 50 yards or whatever. It was so impressive that he was able to put the ball up, make it a true 50-50 ball. But probably what was even more impressive was AJ Brown seeing Trent McDuffie was right there. Trent McDuffie wasn't looking towards the ball. McDuffie was clearly just looking at AJ Brown, and basically AJ Brown was able to shoulder him, make it look like the ball was going to be a little bit short, and then AJ Brown just ran right past him, was able to catch it in the corner of the end zone. So big games for both of the Eagles wide receivers as well as Dallas Goddard. I think that's going to be a big focal point for the Eagles. It's just keeping that trio together after this season. And I think a lot of other teams are going to try and emulate that by getting a really good tight end and 2 really good receivers to complement whatever quarterback they have. But you're right. Andy Reid was in his bag in this game. He was that one touchdown scheme that he had for Kadarius Toney was so cool, where he had Toney motion and going towards the quarterback, and then he motioned right back out. And at that point, neither cornerback that was on that side had any chance because Toney was just so open at that point, and Mahomes put it right where he needed it. It was
Yeah, it was
so
such a
easy.
good play. He ran it again with Sky Moore and had the exact same result. I mean, just
Yeah.
a 10 yards of separation on the goal line. I mean, like, anyone on that team could have made that pass at that point. Like, they were just so open.
hmm So yeah, Tony was huge. Sky Moore was huge. What was interesting for me too is how much special teams really played into this game as well. That had cost Chiefs all season long. Their special teams was just not that impressive. They had a crucial fumble return drop by Sky Moore that cost them the game against the Colts. But Kadarius Toney was great in this game, and that punt returner role, it made it completely worth the picks that they gave up for him. He had that one punt return that went all the way down to the 5 yard line, and I was looking into it after the game because I was like, God, what a terrible punt by the Eagles punter, right? Because he had a line drive punt that just went straight to Kadarius Toney, and then he's able to draw all the Eagles players on one end of the field and then just reverse course. And I didn't realize this, but the Eagles brought back their punter that they originally had throughout the season, and the guy was hurt towards the end of the season, and they brought that hurt guy back, and it kind of looked like it during this game. The punts just weren't there.
Yeah, no, the special teams for the Eagles weren't great, or at least the punt coverage and everything, because Tony was getting 10 yards plus every single carry, and then obviously the big breakaway. Yeah, the picks given up for Tony, obviously hindsight's 2020. If you win the Super Bowl, they look fantastic, but he truly played an integral part when we were both kind of wondering if he'd even touch the field in the Super Bowl. So, he didn't get hurt when it mattered, and that's all that matters really when it comes down to it.
Yeah, exactly. Other receivers here, Devontae Smith was so big in this game. Early on, they were hitting him super hard, or just like going almost for his head. It looked like in this game, he had, by my count, 3 or 4 big hits put on him. And Devontae Smith is a small guy. Like that's kind of his mo, is that he's just like a skinny, tall guy, and he just kept getting up and doing more catches. He's the only guy that hit triple digits in receiving yards in this game. I am super impressed on him, and I don't think there's any guy in the entire NFL that I flipped on more in this season. I went from going into the season thinking Devontae was just like a wide receiver too, to like I think some teams should go out and try and get Devontae Smith if the Eagles aren't trying to pay highly for 2 wide receivers. What do you think about Devontae Smith?
No, you summed it up really well. He absolutely balled out. The biggest concern, obviously, of him coming out of college was that slight frame. but he just, similar to Lamar Jackson, he just knows how to not get hit, except for the Super Bowl where he was getting absolutely smoked. It seemed like every time he touched the ball. But I mean, he's just so shifty and just so unbelievably fast and straight line. He just found every possible way to get open. And I mean, obviously has the hops to go and make big plays. You have to be excited. You brought up the question a podcast or two ago. Would you rather have two stud receivers or a stud quarterback with no receivers? And both teams kind of showed that it doesn't matter as long as you just really have the system that you like. I mean, Patrick Mahomes wasn't thrown to any for sure, just stud receiver. And I mean, Hurts in his own right's pretty damn good, but he had all sorts of weapons to throw the ball to. And these were just two incredibly evenly matched teams, and it was just a good Super Bowl.
Yeah, you brought up Mahomes' weapons. Yeah, obviously Kelsey. I don't know how he keeps getting open. They were asking him after the game, "How do you keep getting open?" He's just like, "I just play, and that's what happens." But also, the other receivers for the Chiefs were huge. The guy we were all kind of expecting to repeat was Marquez Valdez-Scantling after his big AFC Championship. He put up 0 yards. There are a lot of betting player people out there that were really expecting a big game from like Jody Fortson, Marcus Kemp. They didn't end up doing anything. The guy that really stepped up in the game was Juju Smith-Schuster this week. He had 7 catches, over 50 yards receiving, and just had a lot of really key catches on second and long and third downs as well. I was super impressed by him, and I was looking at his contract again today because it's up after the season. I forgot how incentive laden his contract was. He got a 1 year deal for roughly $3 million, and then he ended up earning $5.5 million in incentives, including $1 million in the Super Bowl after getting the win. So,
Yeah.
what do you think happens with Juju after this year?
He was definitely playing like a guy that had half a milli on the line for that game or a mil on, I mean, like he was just balling out. 7 catches, I swear 6 of them were for like critical first downs, not, a first down that happens to be a 10-yard throw. Like it was like, oh, this is 3rd and 8. We need it. And Juju's just wide open. He really played well, which is great to see because he definitely has a lot of doubters out there. Um, was the question, what does he do after the end of the season?
Yeah.
It's tough because the Chiefs' main focus obviously is going to be keeping Mahomes and Kelsey on the roster as long as possible. Like I just don't know what kind of bandwidth they have to pay him what he's probably going to command on the open market with there just being no real free agents out there, right? I mean, like after Jacoby Myers, he might be wide receiver 2 as far as free agents are concerned. Like there's just not a lot out there, and he could probably get someone to pay pretty heavily for him. He just got the Super Bowl. Is he really like that big on the Super Bowls, or does he finally want to get paid because he just hasn't yet as a young guy?
Yeah, they've been saying nice things back and forth. The Chiefs been saying nice things about Juju. Juju's been saying that he wants to come back. I don't know if you saw the tweet today that him and AJ Brown were doing back and forth between Juju and AJ Brown. But AJ Brown was basically calling Juju a TikTok star only, and that Mahomes resurrected his career. Do you think Juju can keep doing what he's doing? He had about 900 yards receiving this year without Mahomes? Or do you think he's really that codependent on Mahomes at this point?
I don't know if he's codependent on Mahomes, but I also don't think he's the star in a system. Like, I think if he's a wide receiver 2 or just has a really good quarterback, he'll be fine. If you're signing him to be your wide receiver 1, I think you're going to really be hurting the way the Steelers were when they got rid of Antonio Brown. They thought Juju's going to step in that role, and he just simply couldn't.
I don't know if you're giving him as much credit as I think he's due. Like, I think he's one of the most disrespected wide receiver ones in all of the NFL. I pointed out his incentive laden deal, which, like, good for Juju for going out there and getting all of that. But, like, Jesus, like, not often do wide receivers ones get so lowballed during a season, and all because of what? Like, because he does some TikToks and stuff. So I'm really happy for Juju. I'm really glad that he clapped back at AJ Brown. I thought that was hilarious, and AJ Brown definitely deserved it because, if you're a winner, you can talk all the shit that you want. And I'm looking at Sport Track right now, and they have Juju's value at 14.7 million on the open market next year. Do you think he's going to be worth that?
I don't think he's worth it, and I also don't think there's a chance the Chiefs sign that. I think
Yeah.
they're just gonna be like, look, it's gonna be just like the peak Tom Brady years where it's like Pat's gonna make whoever is on that team look really freaking good. We're not about to break the bank, for a wide receiver 2. It just is what it is. I'd rather sign, some more defensive players because when that defense steps up, they win the game pretty much every time. They've got a lot of really talented rookies that they drafted this year. I think they're going to want to make sure they're keeping them, in 4 years versus trying to keep Juju happy. I mean, obviously with contracts, you can always play some shenanigans, but I just don't think Juju is what matters to this team.
Yeah, and they have a lot of young guys too now. Now that they have Kadarius Toney in there, Sky Moore was a second round pick. As much as they've been talking good things about each other back and forth, I do think that Juju will get a lot of money elsewhere, and he kind of deserves it at this point in my mind. And you brought up the defenders that the Chiefs have; they have so many guys they have to pay. Frank Clark, who randomly turns really good in the playoffs for whatever reason, but he's pretty normal during the regular season, is worth 30 million on the cap hit next year. Chris Jones is at 28 million next year. And just going down it a little further, like Justin Reed at 12 and a half, MVS at 11 million. Like they're going to have some tough decisions that they're going to have to make about the cap next year. Not to mention Patrick Mahomes' cap hit goes up to 47 million, which will be 21% of the cap next year. So
And
they're going to have some tough decisions to make.
also, at what point do they have to re-sign L'Jarius Sneed? Because I mean, he's a true stalwart in that defense, and I think he's still on his rookie deal. But
Mm-hmm.
you're signing L'Jarius over Juju, and that's like no question, right? So like, I mean, there's just players they've got to sign. It's going to be fun to see how they handle Pat off of that rookie contract now, right? This is where the real GMsmanship, if you will, it's time to it's like their time to shine, right? How do we see that play out when in the past 4 or 5 seasons, we've really seen the teams that seem to take off are the ones that have a quarterback on a rookie deal and a ton of just stud players around them. Well, now we've got Pat off that rookie deal. How do they do with, 20-30 million dollars less cap space just because of his $15 million a year, which again, not a bad contract. It's actually a team friendly contract, but it still is a $50 million a year cap hit.
Yeah, it's going to get slim pickings really quickly. And luckily, the cap went up a lot going into next season. So the Chiefs are able to absorb a few more guys. And as you mentioned, what a luxury to have Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed, your CB1 and your cornerback 2, on rookie deals making less than 1% of the cap each. Like, that's pretty incredible stuff right there. So, yeah, they're going to have to get real creative. Might be a few more trades, might be some surprise cuts in the future for the Chiefs, but you take that for 2 championships in the last handful of years. So let's talk about the holding call now. You brought it up at the top. What were your thoughts on the holding call, and how much did it ruin the game for you?
Very soft, very very soft. They weren't calling anything all night, which is fine. I think people wanted to see the two teams solve it on the field, right? Let them decide. It I think it hurts even more because the same thing happened last season, right? Little phantom holding call out of nowhere on a third down. It gave the Rams all but every opportunity to score a touchdown. But the Bengals still got the ball back, right? So it made it not as painful. It's like the Bengals still had a chance to tie or win that game. This one was tough because it was like, oh, the Eagles, you don't get the ball back now because that was a third down. The Chiefs absolutely would have kicked the field goal. You've brought up that Butker hasn't been on his A game this season. It wasn't a guaranteed. It was a chip shot, but that doesn't mean it's guaranteed. But I mean, it just takes the wind out of the sails. The last 2 minutes of the game. Now, I was just like bummed. I'm like, we missed a chance at an all-time great Super Bowl. Like it was a good Super Bowl, but then that kind of phantom call, not phantom. It was 50-50, whatever. It was ticky tacky. It didn't need to be called. The ball was like 20 yards over Juju's head. It was a clear throwaway. Like just wave the flag off and let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's kind of probably the part that I have the hardest time believing in this call is just like how uncatchable that ball was. Even with just like the slight slowdown that Juju had, he wasn't catching up to that in any world. So I don't know what was up with that. Bradbury, after the game, the cornerback on the call, said that it was a hold. In the letter of the law, I guess it was. The way I saw it, it was a pretty much a 50-50 call. If the ref wanted to call it, fine. If the ref didn't want to call it, fine. And in the sense of a consumer, a customer, I really didn't want them to call it because it definitely made for a wet fart of an ending of the game. Whereas we could have had a much more exciting game, thinking back to like that Steelers Cardinals Super Bowl and everything. But it definitely was a bummer. And then the Chiefs went down to the 1 yard line. Really smart on Jerick McKinnon's part to just fall at the 1 yard line, just like Brandon Jacobs did for the Giants a handful of years ago. But yeah, and then Butker was able to make that chip shot because I think that Butker's really been struggling this year, and they need to bring in some competition for him next year. After having a really great start as a kicker for Harrison Butker, he's really fallen off since then, but that's just an aside. So yeah, I didn't have as much of a problem with the holding call. It's definitely feeding into like the conspiracy theory feelings that a lot of NFL fans have been having lately, but I don't think anything's going to change all that much. Roger Goodell came out and said that he thought the refereeing this year was greater than it's ever been, which I don't agree with, but like, I feel like we say this every year, and people who are paying attention, they're like, well, it can't get that much better because every single year we're just like super angry. So there's room for improvement, but like realistically, we're just like prisoners of the moment and think that it's really, really bad right now. So I think that a lot of people are going to get over this, and the hard part obviously is that it's two straight Super Bowls with two key holding penalties in the final moment of games. So I think that's going to stick in people's mind more
I won't
so.
even say it's we'll get over it quickly. I think just by virtue of at the end of the day, the Chiefs won, so like that's what people are going to remember. Like you don't remember a penalty, but for us here, it just hurts because we had what truly could have been one of the best Super Bowls ever, right? I mean, a top five. It just never had that moment, and this could have set up that moment. So you think a Malcolm Butler interception on the goal line, right? A Julian Edelman bobble catch type play. The Titans player, gets to the 1 yard line and reaches the ball out. I mean, just time and again, there's so many like key plays that put Super Bowls up and over the top, and that was taken away from us because the Eagles didn't get the ball back, with under 2 minutes, and that would have just been nothing but highlight plays potentially. Even if it was for the Chiefs, right? If the Chiefs get a strip sack or something, the Chiefs get a huge tackle, like you're going to see that highlight for the next 10 years I mean, these guys just dancing on Hurst's grave if they get that sack, but we didn't get that. We got to watch Mahomes kneel the ball into a field goal. It wasn't exactly climactic in any way.
No, not at all. And yeah, it's gonna be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of Eagles fans. They seem to be taking it better than the Bengals fans did last week, but definitely a tough loss for them. Looking at other things here, we were hilariously close to Nick Bolton winning Super Bowl MVP. He had the one touchdown return earlier in the game, picked up a fumble and went all the way. And then he was also the guy who picked up the Miles Sanders fumble slash not fumble. And he also brought that in for a touchdown before they called it back. That was hilarious to me because like I feel like probably 99% of America couldn't mention who Nick Bolton is. They have no idea who that guy is. And the fact that he could have potentially won Super Bowl MVP over Mahomes would have been hilarious because just being real, like Nick Bolton having two touchdowns and maybe Mahomes doesn't get another one after that. So he's at two touchdowns and under 200 yards. It's definitely going to the defender at that point, right? Kind of like Michael Bennett did for the Seattle Seahawks.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as MVPs go, I mean, this Mahomes had to have had one of the weakest cases since Brady's 2018 MVP. Or no, that wasn't because Edelman got that MVP. Never mind. Like it was probably one of the weakest cases for an MVP in 20 years, and not anything against Mahomes. He played a good game, but like he had 180 passing yards.
Yeah.
Like that's one of his worst games of the season in the regular season, right? I mean, he had 3 touchdowns, but shoot, they were passes from the 1 yard line. I mean, they could have ran it, and they just happened to decide to throw the ball on that play. Like it really wasn't there wasn't any one guy that had an obvious MVP performance. There was, I mean, I guess really Hurts did, but outside of that, I mean, it was just a lot of guys playing really, really high level football, and I mean, just making plays all over the place. Like I said, Goddard played such a great game. AJ Brown made huge catches. Devontae, the only person over 100 yards, like you said. I mean, just all these guys were playing such great football, and I mean, Jalen had 4 total touchdowns. Like everyone was just playing great, and then Mahomes just like kind of fell into it because no one on the Chiefs really had any kind of stellar performances. It was just a true team win, and I guess at that point, then it's just okay. Well, who's the team captain? Well, it's Patty Mahomes, so here's the MVP.
Yeah, and like he definitely played a clutch game at the end there, like not making a big mistake, doing the smart thing and kneeling it down and wasting a few seconds in there. Like he didn't have a big mistake in the game, so he didn't lose them the game, but I don't think he was the sole purpose for them winning the game. But like you said, whenever it's coming to the Super Bowl MVP time, they just always side towards the quarterback. And I just looked it up. You mentioned that it was probably his lowest passing total of the season. It was 182 yards. His next closest was 195 yards a couple weeks earlier earlier in the playoffs. So that's kind of a big shock. Like Mahomes has yet to have a marquee Super Bowl performance, because going against the 49ers, it wasn't all that impressive. Going against the Buccaneers was obviously not all that impressive. So maybe eventually we'll end up getting a big Mahomes game in the Super Bowl. Looking at Mahomes' legacy and just like other takeaways from this game beyond just the game, this is Mahomes' legacy so far. I'm going to read it out to you, and then I have a question for you at the end. So, Mahomes has been a starter in the league for 5 years. He's gone to 5 straight championship games in the AFC, 5 straight divisional titles, 5 straight 12-win seasons, 5 straight Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and 2 NFL MVPs. Only the third quarterback ever to have multiple MVPs and NFL Super Bowl MVPs. My question for you is, how many more championships does Mahomes need to get in order to pass Brady in your mind?
He would need 6 more. So Tom's going to be stuck at 7. If they're both at 7, Tom won in the heads up battle.
Okay.
So I mean,
Want to
I think
elaborate?
that's I mean, I just think when it comes to it, right? Like it's going to be that classic Jordan LeBron debate of, well, who has the most ships, and then people on my side of the aisle with Tom Brady are going to probably find any way to skirt off Mahomes' absurd passing stats, because I mean, every indication is he's going to have nothing but insane passing yardages his whole career, because the game is just positioned that way. Um, I really hope people can be just like realize that they both played in different eras, because Tom's first half of his career was an entirely different NFL than we have today.
It is.
Um, so I would appreciate, or I feel like we should just appreciate that we in our lifetime have gotten to see 2 unbelievably incredible quarterbacks. Um, there's going to be GOAT debates nonstop for their entire career, or his entire career at this point. But yeah, I really think it has to be, Pat getting to 8, because even if he gets to 7, it's like, yeah, but remember when Brady just dismantled the Chiefs the one time that they played each other? And also, like, I'm trying to think, for Tom's 6th Super Bowl, he went into Arrowhead and beat Mahomes, right? Like, 2 of Mahomes' 3 losses in the playoffs currently are to the Tom Brady led teams.
Okay, but like, what if Mahomes ties Brady in championships? You said 6 more, so that would imply that Mahomes needs to get to 8 in order to equal Brady's 7. Would you be, if it was 7-7? Are you still picking
Yeah,
Brady?
yeah. If it's 7-7, I'm picking Brady, because Tom heads up has 1 more.
Okay,
As in,
but
like, the 2 against, like, Tom against Patrick, like, physically against Patrick in games, has 1 more in playoffs.
like that was young Mahomes, right? And that's like mature Brady, right? So it's like, can you really equate the two that much?
I would say so. I don't know why you. I mean, it was old man Brady at that point. It wasn't like, I know you're gonna say it's young Mahomes, but like that also wasn't, 2007 prime Tom Brady. Like, that was 44-year-old Tom Brady, 43-year-old. Like, I mean, are you gonna say, or is Patrick Mahomes gonna play at the same level at 43? I mean, obviously we don't know yet, right? But it's like, you can't just say, oh well, that was older, or it was young Mahomes, so you can't count. It's like, yeah, that was also old ass Brady.
Fair. But like, okay, so I don't want to keep playing whatabouts all night long, but like, if Mahomes keeps getting MVPs, like Brady has 3, Mahomes keeps just racking up regular season awards. At what point do you give that to Mahomes if he's just crushing it, and the regular season he gets to maybe like 4 Super Bowl titles or something like that?
I mean, then he's just, like, he's on pace to be a top 3, top 5 all time quarterback, and I mean, you have to, you play to win the game, right? It's a true team win the game sport. Like, you got to win Super Bowls.
Okay, I
It's
appreciate
no
the
easy feat, and I mean, he's on one hell of a start, right? Like, I mean, we saw the same thing out of Brady. Though it's like, now what happens as these bigger contracts come through? That'll be, I think, interesting as we go into the next 10 years of Mahomes' career, because Tom started off with, oh, excuse me, I hit my mic there, but Tom started off with 3 very early in his career. Mahomes has 2 very early in his career, but we've seen, like, teams adapt, things change. Like, we just need to see their careers play out, and then we can have the debate when it's all said and done.
Don't hit your mic, James. Just trying to rile you up a little bit. I'm just
I
talking about
know.
some what about it. It's just nothing crazy here. Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page, but like, I think if Mahomes just crushes in the regular season, right, and he's racking up like the most passing yards ever, if he passes Breeze, Manning in that respect, and he's put up a ton of touchdowns and everything, like I could reasonably see Mahomes getting to like 4 Super Bowl titles, and then I'm like, oh, he's past Brady. I think Brady's had some incredible teams around him as well as some incredible coaching. Granted, I think Andy Reid's starting to get on that level, right? Like two Super Bowls for Andy Reid now in his career. I think he's like one of like 13 coaches or so who have had that happen in their career. So Andy Reid's definitely someone that is huge for Mahomes, but like obviously he won't have Andy Reid forever. There was rumors about Andy Reid retiring this offseason anyway. So I think it's close, or it can eventually be close, but I think we still got to keep it in Brady's camp right now, even though Mahomes looks incredible.
I mean,
On the
right now for sure. Like, I mean, you're talking
yeah,
like we still need to keep in his camp. I mean, what like we need is like 10 years of football to happen, and then we can bring the debate actually back up.
it's fun. It's fun to talk about. It's a hypothetical,
It's,
James. Don't get offended
it's
here.
the sports media industry that we're in. We've got to talk about it every day for content.
Exactly. On the Eagles side of things, they had both of their coordinators leave this week. Shane Steichen to the Indianapolis Colts, and today Jonathan Gannon, their defensive coordinator, to the Arizona Cardinals. So, what do you think of these signings here?
Great signings. I mean, getting Steichens, I think, makes a ton of sense. I mean, this Eagles team, I think it's obvious there's going to be an exodus of talent just because that's what happens when you have this hot upstart team, seemingly come out of nowhere. I think it also really shows just like the potential the Chiefs have going forward and for a while here because somehow Bieniemy, I hope I said that right. Bieniemy, right, is
Yeah,
their offense
enemy.
coordinator. Okay, didn't get a job somehow. It seems almost impossible. With the offense they've been running, and then same. Oh my gosh, I can see his face. I can't think of his name for the defensive coordinator, but like, I mean, the Andy Reid squad is just sticking around. Like these guys are just rolling up. They're like, screw it. It's kind of like what we said with like Lovey and Todd Bowles, where they're like, hey, I'm great at coordinating and I'm on an awesome team. Why don't I just roll with it? Like, it almost feels like more coaches should have that mindset. But obviously, everyone wants to be the top dog. It's just kind of that alpha mentality league. But I mean, that's got to bode really well for the Chiefs' chances of repeating with everyone more or less returning on their coordinators.
Yeah, you were thinking of Spags, Steve Spagnuolo.
Thank you.
The
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's
yeah,
like I can see his face. I know what he looks like. I just for the love of me could not remember his name there for a second.
yeah. I didn't want you racking your brain late at night trying to think of that,
I
but
appreciate that.
of course. I like the Steichen signing a lot more than I like this Jonathan Gannon signing. And who knows? Well, we never really know with these coaching hires, right? Like Matt Patricia was the hottest coordinator for the longest time, and he completely flamed out as a head coach. So you never really know with these things. But Shane Steichen, I thought was an incredible coordinator throughout the season, really helped elevate that entire offense. I attribute a lot of Jalen Hurts' rise to him. I attribute a lot of Devontae Smith's rise to him. And also just like being really smart about handling running backs. Like he's going to go to an Indianapolis Colts team that have a bunch of talent at running back. Deion Jackson, Jonathan Taylor, obviously. I don't know why I mentioned Deion Jackson first. And just a bunch of other guys like Zach Moss that could potentially be coming back. And Steichen was so smart this year by utilizing Boston Scott. Kenny Gainwell looked amazing in the Super Bowl. Miles Sanders. And so I think that'll be really, really great for that Indianapolis Colts offense. And I think he could also get a lot out of Michael Pittman Jr., which I think is really, really huge for this Colts team because he kind of had a disappointing season, low key, throughout this season. So I think they need to get a lot more out of him. On the Jonathan Gannon side, he just didn't seem like that hot of a candidate. And this just kind of feels like the Arizona Cardinals wanted to go the complete opposite of what they just had with Cliff. Cliff Kingsbury, obviously, very offensive minded, uh, not a strong leader, I guess. And everything I've heard about Jonathan Gannon is like he's a leader of men, a rah kind of guy, kind of in that Dan Campbell mold. And he's obviously a lot more defensive. So he gets away from that like more offensive scheme. So I'm a little less excited about the Gannon hiring, but I'm really excited to see what Steichen can do for the Colts because he was my favorite for winning Assistant of the Year, which you won with your D'Amico Ryan's pick.
Well, and Steichen's definitely stepping into a much better situation, I think, than Gannon because that Cardinals team is a dumpster fire right now. However, the talent they do have is on defense, so we'll see what he does.
Yeah, you brought up Bieniemy, which I think was smart. Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. What does he have to do in order to get a head coaching job? Like, does he need to
Wait
get
for
like
maybe Andy retires this year and he just knew he was going to get to the Chiefs job or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does he need Andy Reid to have like one too many cheeseburgers? Does he need to go to the CFL and coach in Canada? Like, it seems like he can get a head coaching job, whether it's college or NFL at this point. I know he has his off the field stuff that he had in the way distant past and everything, but like, it seems ridiculous at this point. Like, the best coordinator for the best team now twice still doesn't get a head coaching job. Like, that's pretty insane level
And
stuff. You
I'm
don't see
sure
that very
part of
often.
it, and part of it's probably people going, well, that's Andy Reid's offense. It's nothing he's doing, and like, oh, it's just Patrick Mahomes. Anyone can call for him, but like we saw this past season, the Bucks offense looked like world beaters last year. You hand it over to Byron Leftwich, and they looked absolutely atrocious. Like you can't discredit the guy actually calling the plays there. I mean, obviously Andy has his hand in it all, and obviously Mahomes can make some pretty bad plays look good, but you can't discredit the coaching. Like I think this year, above almost any other year, we've seen like how important coaching is in the NFL.
Yeah. Another interesting note with these coaching hires, I was looking back on this. In 2018, the Colts hired Frank Reich, the then Eagles offensive coordinator, to be their head coach. And then 2021, the Eagles turned around and hired Nick Sirianni, the Colts offensive coordinator, to be their head coach, who's still currently their head coach. Obviously, the Colts fired Frank Reich. He's now on the Panthers. And so in 2023, the Colts hire the Eagles offensive coordinator to be their head coach. So I'm really curious to see who Steichen gets to be their offensive coordinator, because in a couple of years he'll end up being the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously. So kind of
Obviously,
a kind of a weird circle they got going on right there.
the Eagles
Uh,
have gotten the better of it all too.
oh, 100%. I mean, getting to two Super Bowls and winning one, like, you take that 10 times out of 10. Other news that's been going down: Derek Carr officially got released by the Raiders today. He had the biggest FU moment I've seen by a quarterback in a minute. He clearly was tired of the Raiders at this point. Instead of accepting a trade, because apparently he has a no trade clause, which I don't know why the Raiders gave him that in the first place, he declined to get traded, declined to allow the Raiders to recoup any assets in order for trading Derek Carr, and instead got released to where now he can pick whatever team he wants to go to and have whatever salary and contract structures that he wants to have. So the downside here is he could potentially leave some money on the table if negotiations don't go well. But where do you think Derek Carr goes from here, and what do you think the Raiders do from here?
Well, my favorite was the thought that he turned down a trade to the Saints just so he could go sign as a free agent with the Saints and give them a team friendly deal. I'm with Derek on this one. They treated him like shit, and he was one of the best quarterbacks to come through that franchise. Not the best, but one of the best, right? Like they did him dirty. I have no problem with him saying, "No, I'm not helping you guys after this bullshit." Like I know what I've got.
Same.
So I think he goes to the Saints to be honest. Like that just feels like the right fit. They need a quarterback. They still have some juice maybe left in the tank. They just couldn't quite figure it out this year. I think maybe he might be able to bring, if he brings a 9 or 10 win season, that's probably playoffs out of the NFC South. 9 wins, I'd say maybe even does it really. So I think he could do that for the Saints, and that might be what that team needs just to kind of kickstart themselves here before the true rebuild begins. Even though I've been saying they might just want to rebuild.
Let's play a couple of games here. I know you love my random games that I bring up. So one, how much do you think Derek Carr has made in his NFL career?
Oh, he had a huge contract, right? Like the one of the first like 100 mil guarantee type contracts. So I'm gonna give him probably 250. No, I'll go 300 career earnings. No, he hasn't played that long. Yeah,
No,
300 career earnings. I'm
he
gonna go
hasn't
300
played
career
long.
earnings.
He hasn't played long enough for that. He's only 31.
Okay, so then I'll go two 245 career earnings.
You're way over. It's 135 million. If you look back on it, he did reset the market, but the market was way lower back then. So he's made at his peak 25 million this past year, but it's only 135 total.
Huh. Okay.
Okay, you're in a different stratosphere of
I know.
market value,
I'm
but
in the new era of quarterbacks.
yeah, you're used to the Justin Herbert signing that's about ready to go down, where he's going to make 50
He
million a
just,
year.
I guess Derek just needed to assault more women so he could have got 250 guaranteed.
It's just how it works. And
I
then
don't know. He's too Christian.
my second game here is Derek Carr, if he goes to the NFC, is a top blank quarterback in the conference. What do you think he is? What number?
I'll go top 8.
Top 8. Okay. Who's ahead? Just like spitballing.
Okay, I gotta rack my brain for NFC quarterbacks here, but I mean Hertz obviously is ahead.
Yeah,
Um, Rogers, if he stays, is ahead. God, who else is
it's a big
quarterbacks in the
if.
division? I would say, I mean, he and Dak are basically the same quarterback, so one
Okay.
A, one B there, or 8A, 8B there.
What about like
Um,
Jared Goff? Who would you have?
Probably Goff after this past season. I mean, Goff's big thing has always been, can he read the defense? And I think he proved it last season. He wasn't perfect, but definitely turned the ball over much less than Derek Carr. So I'd take Goff.
Yeah.
I'd take Fields because of the rushing upside. I'd take Captain Kirk, even though he's old dump down Kirk.
Gino.
It, no, I'll take Carr over Gino. I'm not. I don't believe in Gino just yet. He had a good season, but there's a reason he was a backup for 10 years.
Yeah. The other guys here are all in the AFC, so like he's probably like top 5, right? Like I think he only rattled off like 4 or 5 guys there.
I mean, every NFC quarterback or an NFC East quarterback I would take. So that's four.
Danny Dimes.
Sorry, NFC North quarterback I would take. That's four. That's what I meant. I
Okay.
meant like yeah, all Bears, Lions, Vikings, etc. Okay, I would
Okay,
take
gotcha.
Hurts, obviously. I would take I, okay, maybe that makes some top six.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of scratching my head here, but it's like NFC North, and then I don't know who else because I'm not
Yeah.
taking any of the. I'm not taking NFC East quarterbacks. I know that's where I had my slip there, but
Yeah.
he and Dak are the same quarterback.
Well, and then like all the NFC West quarterbacks who you would normally have probably over Derek Carr all have big question marks going into this year. Like, does Geno Smith repeat? Does Matthew Stafford get healthy? Does Kyler get back in time in order to have any sort of meaningful impact this year? And then like whatever's going on with the 49ers situation. So I think a lot of people are underrating how terrible the NFC quarterback crop is compared to the AFC, and Derek Carr, just by moving over conferences, could really elevate a Saints or something like that really, really quickly just because there's a dearth of talent. And also, you have to consider, let's look at the draft a little bit right here, right? Where are most likely CJ Stroud and Bryce Young going to go? The first
They're
pick
on the
is the Bears.
AFC.
Yeah, the first pick is the Bears. The most common trade that I've seen with that is to go to the Colts. And then who has the number 2 pick? The Texans. And they're probably going to take the other quarterback. So it's going to be very AFC heavy really quickly. And all the young talent is also going to be the AFC because even if like Rodgers stays or Cousins stays in the NFC, they're old and like could fall apart any moment now. So there's a very big power vacuum developing in the NFC. And I don't think a lot of people realize it yet.
Yeah, every mock I've seen, even it's like you know, like a Bryce Young goes to the Texans because they trade up, and then a Will Levis would go to the Colts, and then that leaves like CJ Stroud potentially to like the Panthers or something. Like it's like the Panthers, like the first NFC team to get a quarterback is like Anthony Richardson. It's like that's not exactly a guaranteed. He's just had some good tape in his 1 year that he's played.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith in Anthony Richardson, but like you're delusional if you think that Anthony Richardson isn't some level of a
Yeah,
project
and
or
I messed it up
some
because
level of a gamble.
The Panthers are NFC, so I scratched that. The top two quarterbacks are probably going AFC,
Yeah,
and I guess unless it's CJ that falls to the Panthers, but
yeah.
we'll see what happens.
CJ could very easily fall to the Panthers. That's a great point, but even the Panthers could trade up into that top 2 as well. They have a lot of draft ammo that they could make that happen. So, do you have any other Super Bowl takeaways, fallouts from this game for these two teams, or just league wide?
Takeaways not as much. Fallout, I would say of these two teams, I think it's pretty obvious, but like, what does each team have to do to get back next year?
Yeah, I mean, we see that hangover very often. I tried to call it with the Bengals, didn't really see it with the Rams, and then I had it completely opposite. Rams fell off. They were projected for 8.5 wins by Vegas this year, finished 5-12, and the Bengals actually played pretty dang well. So I think out of these two teams, I think the Eagles are a little bit more well positioned in order to repeat, just because of those big contracts that the Chiefs have. And I don't really know what that Frank Clark like buyout's going to look like, or like Chris Jones restructuring. Whereas the Eagles could probably just like let a couple guys walk, retool a little bit, and also they already have a lot of guys that are just going to see even more internal development, right? Like trading what essentially was Traylon Burks for AJ Brown is a heist. Like a lot of other teams probably should have been in on that trade sweepstakes from the Titans last year. So I think the Eagles just kind of maintaining the status quo. Don't overpay for Miles Sanders is a really key piece here. Go get a guy in the second round or third round of the draft. I think the pass rush is fine, but like expecting these corners who are a little bit on the older side, not too much, but Darius Slay and James Bradbury, cornerback play just like isn't very sticky from year to year. So like going out and getting one of these top corners in the draft, I think would be really smart as well. On the Chiefs side of things, I think you also need to make sure you don't overpay for Orlando Robinson or Orlando Brown Jr. Excuse me. You got to make sure you don't overpay for him. He was a turnstile at offensive tackle this year. I'm a little worried about how they're going to handle that negotiations. The internal part of the offensive line is fine. Um, and I think you just keep banking on some internal development on the wide receivers as well. Cutting CEH or at the very least not picking up his fifth year option, I think is something that they should definitely look into. And yeah, maybe just keep adding more and more to that defense because, as you mentioned, L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, their contract re-signing is going to be here before we know it. So there's paths for both of these teams to not have a big hangover because we don't have like a Rams who like went all in on first round picks and cashing those out for veterans here. But they do need to keep making moves because if you stay complacent, that's usually when you fall off in the NFL.
So I've seen two mock drafts, with one actually mocking Bijan Robinson to the Chiefs and one mocking Bijan Robinson to the Eagles. Who would with which team would he have a bigger impact in your opinion?
Bigger impact Eagles, but like they're never going to do it. Howie Roseman is their executive vice president, GM, whatever position you want to call it, the decision maker for their roster. And he doesn't value running backs. Nowhere he's been in the NFL has he cared about running backs. But him and Jalen would be so fun to watch in Philly. I think the Chiefs are honestly in a really good spot with Pacheco. I brought McKinnon just being super smart at the end there, stopping at the 1 yard line, but Pacheco look angry all game long, and that's what I like in a running back is like Dalvin Cook looked really angry running in young late early on in his career. Zeke Elliott had the same feeling. Kamara had the same feeling. I kind of feel like Pacheco could really burst onto the scene next year. I think he's gonna go really high in fantasy drafts next year, and so I think Bijan would have a more immediate of an impact in Philly because they're gonna have a vacuum from Miles Sanders most likely going elsewhere this offseason.
Interesting. For those of us that just don't know college football as well as NFL, how good is Bijan Robinson? Because I've seen him comp to Saquon Barkley. Like they're like he's the closest thing we're gonna get to seeing Saquon again. Like, do you really put him in the same category, or is that just being a little bit too prisoner of the moment?
I don't think it's prisoner of the moment, depending on your rushing style. Saquon was obviously the more power of the running back, whereas Bijan's got a little bit more of that finesse going on. I think the better comp is maybe like a souped up Melvin Gordon or a little bit better than Jonathan Taylor as a prospect. Bijan Robinson is a super smart runner. He never misses any gaps. Obviously had a pretty good offensive line at Texas, but even when things were falling apart, he was able to get involved in the passing game. So he's only had a couple bad games in college, so he's pretty much situation proof at this point. But he didn't have those like insanely big games that I'm remembering from Saquon at Penn State. So I think like a Jonathan Taylor or like a slightly better Melvin Gordon is a better comp for him.
Okay.
Where do you want him to go? What's the ideal Bijan situation?
I mean, I don't know if he's if it's the back half of round one and the Chiefs grab him, I could see that being just like an incredible extra weapon, on a pretty cheap contract because like I said, Juju's not coming back. Uh the dual threat aspect that he brings seems pretty insane as a possibility. And then you can never have too many, utility tool type running backs. I think him with Pacheco could be pretty exciting. So like seeing that, I was like, damn, that would be pretty wild. Otherwise, I don't know. It just feels like whoever's going to grab him, it's going to look awesome for 3 years, and then you're going to slowly see, oh yeah, there's a reason we don't draft running backs highly because they get banged up, and now we're deciding
Yeah.
if we want to pay him $100 million, and no one really wants to. So it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, I think maybe the new running back market just model for running backs is drafting a running back fairly highly in the draft and then doing what the Raiders did and running the hell out of your running back like they did with Josh Jacobs, and then just not signing him to a big contract on the back end there, because that's usually what kills teams, right? Like the Saints are in cap hell right now because of Kamara. The Cowboys are in cap hell because of Zeke. The Vikings are in cap hell because of Dalvin Cook and their big contract. So I think that's kind of maybe the smarter thing to do. The Raiders just like are a bad team and just like didn't really know how to utilize Josh Jacobs. So I think a lot of smart teams could do that. I'd really hate to watch Bijan Robinson like go over to the Cowboys. Like I think that'd be really brutal. I think one of my favorite situations for him would actually be Washington, though. If they could make something happen with Sam Howell, they don't really have a guy that's like the guy. Brian Robinson was kind of close to that, but I think Bijan Robinson could come in immediately and really make them a contender and kind of build on that momentum that they've gotten this year and just bank on some internal improvement on the defense and just see what Bijan Robinson can do in that offense. I think it'd be pretty crazy. Alrighty, looking at some NBA news now. Your favorite, JVD. We're talking about basketball. Had two big trade deadline trades this past week. First up, D'Angelo Russell to the LA Lakers. This was a multi-team trade that watched Russell Westbrook go to the Utah Jazz. D'Lo, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley all go over to LA Lakers and really solidify their rotation. And then we saw some picks exchange hands a little bit here as well. So, what do you think of that trade? And do you think that trade for depth was the move that the Lakers needed to make in order to potentially win a championship with LeBron James this year?
I couldn't believe how quickly people got the jersey swap photoshops on D'Angelo. Like it was impressive to see him in a Lakers jersey so quickly. But really, when it comes down to it, I don't know. Like it's a win to get Russ off your roster. I mean, he's just not. He's not it. I don't think this Lakers team's making a push for a championship, so it doesn't really matter. But if it keeps the GM happy, then I guess that's just what you have to do. So I guess at that point, it makes it kind of a necessary trade.
Yeah, I think they did pretty well in this trade. Like, I was shocked that the Jazz were only able to get one first round pick for Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley. There just like wasn't a lot happening here that I think was going to salvage the Lakers season. Like, I think they did well in this certain trade, but like just in the grand scheme, I just don't. I think it's a little too late, right? Getting off of Westbrook's contract is obviously huge. It isn't expiring, but it at least gives them a little more flexibility in terms of lowering that luxury tax bill that's going to be due at the end of the season. But as you mentioned, they're so far behind. They're like waffling between 10th and 13th in a given week. What's the end goal here, right? Like get into the play-in as a 9 seed and then lose in the first round to the Denver Nuggets. I just think it's too little too late. LeBron James has been hurt the last few games as well, and they're just like really sputtering at this point. So I think they did well. Like it was a smart trade, and Rob Pelinka deserves a lot of credit in that sense. But like when Anthony Davis isn't playing hard, LeBron James is hurt. It just doesn't matter that much. Like this team's just not going much of anywhere. So I'd love to be proven wrong because I love LeBron James and congratulations to him on passing Kareem for most all-time points. But I just don't really see it happening this year. Maybe next year was a better time to have expectations for Jared Vanderbilt and D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's a good take.
yeah. Other trade here, Kevin Durant, obviously the biggest trade of the trade deadline. Kevin Durant getting traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Phoenix Suns. So much stuff going back to the Brooklyn Nets. Malik Beasley, Jay Crowder, who they swapped for more picks, for first round picks. Anything that the Brooklyn Nets wanted, they basically got for Kevin Durant. What do you think of the timing of this trade for both the Suns and the Brooklyn Nets?
Kind of comical from the Nets. I mean, like, what can you think of like a worse 3-year span for a team than what just happened with the amount of hope that just got absolutely shot out of the sky? I mean, when Katie leaves the Warriors, did you ever think the Warriors were gonna have a championship before that Nets team that just added Kyrie and Harden? I mean, I think Harden was a little bit later because they had to, they had to trade for it. But so like the amount of talent that was on that Nets team was like, this team's for real, right? And you're like, damn, this Warriors team is reeling. And then 2 years later, the Warriors win it all, and the Nets are just a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great comparison, honestly, because the Warriors, whenever Kevin Durant left for the Brooklyn Nets, really looked like they were about ready to fall off, whereas the Nets were ascending. And now the whole situation is reversed all over again. And it really comes down to good ownership, good GMs, good management of your team. And look at where the Warriors are compared to the Nets right now. Nets are in shambles. So I think this really elevates the Phoenix Suns into that top three of the Western Conference. You got the Denver Nuggets, you got the Memphis Grizzlies, and now you have the Phoenix Suns. Shout out the Kings still. Like, you guys are still up there. I'm really happy for you guys. But like, that bench depth though is so bad. Like, as soon as you get past that top four, you got my boy TJ Warren, which I'm really excited about. But then like after that, it's like Cameron Payne is your sixth man, maybe. And that's going to be really tough once you come playoff time, when the Memphis Grizzlies are hitting you with 10 guys and the Denver Nuggets go 8 or 9 guys deep. I think that's where it's going to get a little bit tougher. But the Western Conference definitely got way more exciting with this trade. Really injects things into here, and it's really going to make a bigger pain in the ass for a lot of these teams that were hoping to slide into that 4 seed, whether you're like the Dallas Mavericks or you're maybe like the LA Clippers who are hoping to sneak into there. This is going to make things way more competitive. So, looking at your favorite team, though, what do you think of the New Orleans Pelicans kind of standing pat at the trade deadline and maybe getting surpassed by the Phoenix Suns here?
Yeah, I don't even know what we do at this point. It just feels like same old Pelicans. Like no matter what we do, it doesn't matter. Our main guy is going to be hurt. I don't know if Zion ever feels like playing basketball again, and we have him under supermax. Like I don't know. It's just depressing. I just watch highlights at this point because it doesn't feel like a ton of hope coming out of the Pelicans side. But we'll see. Maybe they turn it around here before too long.
Yeah, they had the one trade deadline move for Josh Richardson. Shipped out Devonte Graham and 4 second-round picks for Josh Richardson, which I'm tired of the Jay Rich experience. I thought about making a TikTok about it. I probably still will, but every year I feel like he gives me hope, whether it was with the Sixers or the Heat or whatever, and they just all fall flat on his face, and you just like don't feel that great about the trade after the fact. So I'm tired of being duped. But yeah, brutal about the Zion news. It's sounding like he's going to be reevaluated in a few weeks. And if he's not healthy, like your team's just not going to the places that we really thought they were. They were the number one team basically in the Western Conference just a few weeks ago. And now it's like, is Zion even going to play the rest of the season? Like, you never know with his foot stuff, his back stuff, and everything in between. So, all that to be said, I'm sorry, buddy.
It's all good.
Better luck next year.
Luckily it's like my far and away second favorite pro sport.
Yeah,
Because
you've had way too much Patriot success. You're not allowed to have Pelican
that's
success.
right. If I picked your team for the next 10 years, they're not gonna win because I had too much fun as a Patriots fan.
If New Orleans was good, you'd be too powerful. You can tell yourself
Exactly.
that. All right, you want to do hot take section?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, you want to tell the people what we're doing this week?
Well, thanks to you, we decided let's just kind of evaluate top 5 quarterbacks. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This is just quarterbacks in the league, not like fantasy quarterbacks, as far as
Hmm.
going into just next season.
Yeah, if you want to win in 2023, who are your guys? Is basically what we're looking at.
Yeah,
Obviously can bank in a little bit of internal improvement. Like, there's going to be some offseason improvement, but like, this isn't the time for the CJ Strouds or the Bryce Youngs, most likely.
correct. So I think we're gonna have very similar lists. I think the hottest take is someone that I've left out that you'll probably have your head scratching, but so obviously number one's gonna be Mahomes, just won the MVP, primed to keep doing it. You said it best a few months ago. Like we're at that era where just every season you kind of have to throw bets on Mahomes winning MVP because he is in his prime and is the best quarterback in the league right now. Period. So it's a
Is
lot
there
like Peyton Manning, and you just got to keep assuming he's got a good chance at winning it.
Yeah, let's just go one by one with these guys. Is there any argument against Mahomes at this point? Like, if you were starting the league all over and you just wanted to win next year, does anyone go before Mahomes? I don't really think there is, right? Like, there's no
No,
good argument where you could justify it to your fan base not to go Mahomes.
no, there's absolutely none.
Yeah, he basically, there may have been an argument going into this year. Mahomes was struggling a little bit. He didn't have any marquee playoff performances really outside of maybe one or two in earlier divisional games. But like, he just slammed the door shut on that argument. And he's truly the 101 player whenever it comes to real life football. Hey, you want to
Uh,
go to your number two?
Yeah, sorry, 'cause we had them both for number 1, so that's why I was like, "Are you gonna say it?" But I'm like, "Wait, you kinda did." So,
Yeah,
my
it's
number
obvious.
2, is I'm a big believer in Joe Shiesty, so I've got Joe Burrow at number 2. I know you don't see it the way I do, but Just watching him play, I mean, just a pure passer of the football, really just a go getter. I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. I think he's got the right mentality to lead that Bengals team. He's the guy who I'd want if I couldn't get Mahomes.
Yeah. Joe Shiesty, or as I call him now, Joe Shitty. He's not as bad as I like to make him out to be. I need to see it a little bit more in the playoffs. We've yet to see a Joe Burrow led team score 27 points in a playoff game. They average 23 points per game in the playoffs in general, amongst games that Joe Burrow plays in. So I just need to see a little bit more. Like I think that we saw an MVP caliber season from Jalen Hurts this year, who I have number 2 instead of Joe Burrow. We've had MVP caliber seasons from a few other guys that I have on my list. Whereas Joe Burrow, yeah, he has a good high completion percentage. Yeah, he throws it to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins a lot. I need to see a little bit more and have him perform in the big moments more consistently. Yes, he's made it to the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. I attribute that a little bit more to the team than to just Joe Burrow.
But good. I mean, we're not here to dog people, so give some hurt type since you do have him at 2.
Yeah, yeah. So I love Jalen Hurts. I love what we saw from him this season. I think clearly, if you were doing just like a pure MVP vote, I think Jalen Hurts had to be your number 2 for this season. He's given you everything you want on the ground. That's obvious. We know that. His QB sneak is probably the most deadly since early career Tom Brady. You probably have to even admit to that. And the passing's improving. He's really making all the throws that you want to see. Yeah, he had that Hail Mary at the end of the Super Bowl where it went nowhere and it made it look like he had no arm strength, but realistically he slipped. Like, go back and watch the tape. He stepped on the back of the center's foot, or he slipped, one of the two. But Jalen Hurts is really making all the strides that you really want to see as a passer, and the stuff on the ground is great as well. So I think he just adds a level of dynamism whenever you're looking at this. He's just a very, very well-rounded player.
No, I can't have enough nice things to say about Jalen after I was just so out on him to start the season. I just every step of the way proved me wrong, and I mean, kudos to him. Obviously, he wasn't doing it to prove me wrong, but I'll act like it was. So good job, Jalen. Number 3, I know you absolutely hate this player, but Josh Allen is a fantastic football player. He had maybe half of what Hurts does on the ground, but that's still pretty damn good, and has an absolute rocket for an arm. So uh, I think that's what has me have him above Hurts. Although Hurts, I think after if he has another season like he did this past year, he kind of moves himself up. But for now, I think Allen's just got to be up because really the Bills the past few years has been they go as Allen goes, and then when they lose, it's because Allen's hurt or Allen's just not playing well. And he hasn't had too many games where he wasn't playing well. So you just got to give Josh Allen the a nod here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I dog him all the time, and a lot of that's just all in fun. But I think he's more in that 6 or 7 range for me. There's just a lot of stretches this season where he just kind of got bailed out by a lot of other Buffalo Bills player. I think a lot of smart coaches were able to cover up a lot of his uh, just issues. Yeah, he has a couple weaknesses. He turns the ball over a lot. He makes a lot of risky plays. I think he gets really lucky at the line of scrimmage, just being able to do stupid devil magic level stuff to avoid pass rushers. The arm is what's golden though. Like, he's got an absolute cannon and can throw a billion miles. Like, him and Mahomes having a throw off would be really, really fun to watch. I think he needs to be more precise. I think it would be good for the Bills to upgrade that wide receiver too, because I just don't think Gabe Davis is it. And I just want to see a little more consistency from Josh Allen. So I have him a little further down my list, and I think the player that a lot of people give Josh Allen praise to, I think that praise should be going to Lamar Jackson, who I have in this number 3 slot. I think Lamar is a more dynamic runner. I think he makes a lot more things happen with way less in that offense. And unlike Josh Allen, he actually has an MVP. And he had a very strong start to last year, got injured in the middle of the season, and then ended up having to miss the rest of the season. He's had his slow points, hasn't had that level of success in the playoffs, but I just think he's so close, and he just needs one season to put it all together once again. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago on the pod, Lamar had more passing touchdowns in his MVP season than Joe Burrow, who a lot of people were trying to anoint this season as like the next MVP, had this season. So people underrate his passing. His Running is insane. It's absolutely elite. And I think Lamar is very worthwhile as your number three. And I think he's a guy who can elevate your team all the way to a Super Bowl caliber team, even if your team isn't that strong around him.
And I think the way I feel about Allen is the way you feel about Lamar and vice versa. Where I feel like Lamar's a little bit too overrated, and I think he has some deficiencies that people just look past. I mean, the best ability in the NFL is availability, and every year it seems like he's missing stretches of games. I don't feel like Lamar has that clutch gene because you say, he's the guy that could lead you to a Super Bowl. Well, they were the one seed, and he did not lead them to a Super Bowl. Had one of his worst performances in a home playoff game against, I believe, the Titans at that time. But
It was
uh,
COVID. It was
oh, for
COVID.
sure. Okay, it's like
We don't
I
care.
don't know. Lamar he just doesn't quite have the it as far as it goes when it comes to the playoffs. He has some awesome highlights, but I don't know. I wouldn't be like this offseason's interesting. What do the Ravens do? I think they have to resign Lamar, but if for some reason he hit the open market, I would not want the Patriots to go out of their way to sign Lamar to some $250 million fully guaranteed contract. I got to let someone else pay for it.
Yeah, but is Lamar worth it more than Deshaun Watson? That you got to agree with that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, no
Yeah.
shit. No one thinks Deshaun's contract is good.
Yeah,
That
true.
was just wild. I don't know what they were thinking on that one.
Massive
I don't even
overpay.
know if after this last season Deshaun's a top 10 QB. Like
Yeah.
it's just wild.
Yeah, he really fell off this season. It was so rusty. Deshaun Watson did. Question for you, just because it was on the mind. You brought up Zay Flowers, a wide receiver in the draft this year out of Boston College for the Patriots. What if Zay Flowers went to like the Ravens? That'd be
Yeah,
pretty sick.
and for the listeners, Mac and I text a ton. We both get bored at work, so I don't know if I ever mentioned it in the pod, but I did mention it texting him. Yeah, Zay looked incredible in the Senior Bowl. Um, I think whatever team he goes to, he's really going to pop off. I think that'd be an awesome addition for this Ravens team because he's not like the deep threat 6'4" type with Quentin. What's his name?
Quentin
Quentin
Johnson.
Johnson. Thank you. Um, so like it's not that bomb it deep, but that's not Lamar's game. So like that's okay to have a guy that can take a drag route to the house, things like that. Like he really comps like an Antonio Brown, but not insane. So like that would be one hell of a player to have on any team.
Yeah, definitely. And then you have Jalen Hurts in your four slot here.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about what you like about Jalen Hurts.
I mean, everything you said, he brings it on the ground game. He really elevated his passing to a whole new level this year. I'm sure some of that had to do with having AJ Brown instead of Trey Burks, as you pointed out. But I mean, he was just so accurate, and you saw even in the highest stage, in the Super Bowl, he was just dropping dimes on people. The only real mistake Hurts had all day was the ball slipped out of his hands at the worst possible time, and it was unfortunate. But that kept the Chiefs in the game when the Eagles really could have closed the door in the first half. But I mean that happens. Let's see how he bounces back from it. He seems like an absolutely great leader of men. The team loves him. He just seems like an all around good person. So like I've never doubted that aspect. It was just the passing, and man, did he ramp up the passing percentages this year. So like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the sky's the limit for any Hurts led team.
Bigger question with Jalen Hurts: is he an Oklahoma quarterback or an Alabama quarterback? Which one do you attribute him to?
I would say he's an Oklahoma quarterback. Bama gave up on him. They went to turn the ball over instead of sticking with their guy Jalen, and Jalen went to Oklahoma and had one hell of a season.
That's hot. That's hot. I like it. I like it. I kind of give whoever wants to claim him is allowed to claim him kind of thing because he had prolific careers at both. But yeah, lead Oklahoma. I'm a
Maybe
fan.
he's the guy that does it says his high school, in the Sunday night lineup, like Jalen Hurts quarterback, blah 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 high school. Like just leave the college stuff out of it.
That'd be hilarious. Okay, so we're about ready to go into our number fives here. I kind of already mentioned mine, but maybe people forgot. Let's go through some honorable mentions. Who do you think you would have in like that 6 or 7 slot? I kind of had Josh Allen. I was kind of thinking maybe Dak. A really healthy Tua could potentially maybe get here. Who else are you thinking?
I think you're crazy on both of those. So for me, obviously Lamar would have to be mentioned.
T Law?
I think T Law could be an honorable mention in top 10 if he can keep the production going. Who am I feel like I'm missing a very obvious
Maybe
top
even
10.
Gino if you're really like banking in that current factor and like how
I
he's
I
been
think we're
performing
running into
recently.
I think we're just running into like what Spencer said last week, where it's just like there's so much void of talent at quarterback right now. It's like insane.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I could maybe give it to
The teardrop from like 7 to 8 is
it's yeah.
brutal. You either
There's
you're
truly a
have or have
trench.
not.
Yeah, there's just
Yeah.
a shelf out in the ocean, and it just drops off. I'd like to
Scary.
believe Mac Jones could work his way up there, but
He could.
you
I
know
we
what?
I think we were talking about it a while ago. Like, you got if you're the Patriots and you're trying to improve internally, you have to bank on Mac Jones just getting back to what he was his rookie year, which was a top 15 quarterback immediately for the New England Patriots. And I think you got to bank on the fact that he'll be able to get there with real coordinators there in the team right now.
Yeah, I'm hoping we take, like a Zay Flowers early or, first or second round if he somehow makes it to us. I don't see that happening. But if we go like the first three picks as offensive tackle, I'm perfectly happy with that because God, did we need that this year?
hmm So who do you have in your 5 slot here?
Yeah, I've got Herbert. I think he's kind of like I don't know. I mean, honestly, I feel like he's slowly comping into Phil Rivers just with a way higher ceiling. Um, he's making some huge plays and everything, but just hasn't had the real team success yet. So I hope that's not where he ends up going. But his ability to play through pain, just throw absolute laser beams with broken ribs, can just seemingly do anything with the football. Really, you gotta love to see it. I think he makes some boneheaded throws. I mean, just by virtue of being young, that he needs to clean up. Like they could have beat the Chiefs, week 3 or 4, but he threw a ball straight to a defender for a pick six at the goal line. Like you can't have that if you're wanting to win that division.
Yeah, honestly, and that's where it's kind of tough with Herbert is like his last like 3 games that he's had have been pedestrian or even less than pedestrian. But I end up having Herbert in my 4 slot here. Realistically, I wouldn't be mad if you had Burrow at 4 and Herbert at 5. They could probably go back and forth pretty easily here. It's going to get tough too for the Chargers because there's that report that came out a little while ago that the Chargers might cut Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett, who were obviously 2 of his biggest targets this entire season. So it's only going to get harder for Herbert, not necessarily easier, but just the talent level is so high with Herbert. He has such a big throw, and every single week there's like 2 or 3 throws that Justin Herbert does that I'm just like, holy crap, like that is exactly where he wanted the ball to go, and he just pinpointed where it needed to be. And we say a lot like only Mahomes could make that throw, but sometimes I'm like, maybe it's only Herbert that could make that throw. Like he sees passes that I wouldn't even think a quarterback could do. So I've been very impressed by Justin Herbert. He's very young still, and I think that we could see a kind of a post hype season next year from him, where he puts up an MVP caliber season. Whereas this year, he was actually a surprisingly kind of bad fantasy quarterback, and therefore had like slightly bad stats for a quarterback this year.
I mean, honestly, you have any six of these quarterbacks, you think you've got a chance, right? Like you're not being bummed out that this is who you're rolling with.
Yeah. And yeah, if you're in this like top 7, you're a have, not a have not in this NFL current
Would you put
landscape that we
Rogers at
have.
7? Like he had a pretty down year, but with Tom retiring, like after these 6, like would you say, you know what, screw it, give me Rogers if I have to win this season?
We just got to see how he turns out at the end of the 4-day dark period. He's in day 2 or 3 of it right now, and then we'll kind of find out what his
He'll be
situation
okay.
is going
I
to be
think I think he's
next
gonna
year.
come out a different man.
Different guy for sure. I struggle to put Mahomes, or sorry, I struggle to put Rodgers in the top 5, but he probably needs to be in that honorable mention still. Like even with his kind of meh stats and being down and not really having the good chemistry with his receivers, he still had a pretty impressive season. So yeah, he's in the top 10, but I don't know if he's in my top 5 anymore.
Okay.
Alrighty, anything else we need to touch?
No, I think we'll probably try to start doing some way too early mock drafts and whatnot, but we're really hitting the F5 season, if you will. We're at sports winter at this point, if in my opinion. I'm sure plenty of people are like, you're crazy because there's still basketball and hockey and whatnot, but truly there's just a void of entertainment until September rolls around for me.
Yeah, we're kind of in that void, but March Madness I think will be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of
Okay,
like
yeah, that's
upset
good.
picks that we can talk. NFL Draft is one of my favorite events of the entire year. So I only really know the first round guys, so I'm kind of excited to deep dive and to be on the first round after this. But
Should we
uh,
do a our mock draft write ups? Act like we're Mel Kiper and be probably just as correct as he is because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh, will be easier. Will be way better, easily. Just like looking at more of an aggregate of drafts is going to be way better than anything Mel Kiper could ever put together. Just a little cheat code for everyone out there. Grindingthemocks.com, one of the best websites of all time. It literally just takes all the drafts that are out there by Mel Kiper and people way smarter than Mel Kiper and puts them all together and gives you like an aggregate of where a guy is and not just one person's opinion. It's great, really shows draft trends and like where teams and where experts are expecting players to go. And it's so much better than just looking at an individual mock draft. And I'll be looking at that a lot this draft
What's your
season.
favorite way to watch the draft?
Just watch it on ESPN. Is there
Uh,
any other way that you're thinking?
I'm a big time Pat McAfee draft spectacular. You get Ty Schmidt showing up as Mad Mel and everything. It's just a much more entertaining version of the draft.
Yeah, that honestly probably would be better because I'm so tired of the, oh, my grandma died in a fire
Dude,
and
I
now I
do
had to
not
feel
need
sad
any
about it.
tearjerker stories out of all this. It's so annoying when they
it
try to throw that in there.
It's awful, and it's like, why would you want to be remembered by like the worst event that ever happened in your life just because ESPN wants some clicks? So I might just skip that and just watch it through my laptop or something like that. Just watch the picks that come in.
Or just be a sane person and wait until the next morning and see all 32 in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I like the drama though. Like every once in a while, we have like the Laramie Tunsil gas mask come out, and a guy just drops on draft day, or like thinking back to like some of the quarterbacks that fall into the second round. That's always freaking funny because they're not worth the first round pick that they were expecting. So you never really know with the NFL draft, and that's what makes it a spectacle.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Jimmy D. I'm gonna go watch Mizzou highlights because they just lost by 33, so I need to see what happens. So
Ooh, that's
when
tough. All right, you have a good one, my man.
when Mizzou basketball loses, America wins. See you. Talk to you
For
later.
sure. Bye, everybody.